Okay, so now we're going to talk about, a specific intervention, obviously, equine-assisted psychotherapy. So the benefits of the horse as a partner, really um, not really a co-therapist, but a partner in therapy, a therapeutic presence to the session. So, all right. All right, so first, let's see. Yay, it works. Okay, so the first slide just talks generally about what is equine-assisted psychotherapy. Um, So a general definition is it's an experiential psychotherapy to address mental health challenges. And this is from a study by Mueller and McCullough. It's experiential. That's the main point, I guess. It is a method of psychotherapy to address mental health issues, but instead of talking about things, the child or adults do equine assisted psychotherapy. There's a big, of course, a lot of research regarding veterans with PTSD. This is a very good intervention for them because, again, the experiential, sometimes with trauma, it's a body issue too. You have reactions in your body about certain situations and triggers, and so so it is a good therapy for trauma and PTSD. Okay, so the equine assisted psychotherapy is a team approach. It's not just somebody leading the person around on a horse. That's just basically riding. So it's a therapist in combination with the horse as the partner, and then an equine specialist. So this would be an equine handler, I guess, somebody who's trained to deal with horses. Because what you always want to have a team because there's a safety issue. Let's say, therapeutic horses that do therapeutic activities are screened and, determined if they're fit to be a therapy horse. But horses are still horses. And so, they can get scared of something, and if there are any safety issues, you need somebody who can, deal with the person on the horse, and then another separate person who can deal with the horse and manage the horse. And it's always good to have a team because then really you get more information. There's something, if the therapist may miss something, and the equine specialist could say, oh, well, did you notice when this happened? And so it's just good. It's good to have a team approach. Typically, the psychotherapy can either be done on the ground with just interacting with the horse, or there can be riding activities that are also therapeutic or used for psychotherapy. And that's typically what the psychotherapy portion is. There is also hippotherapy. So hippotherapy is, as you can see on the screen, on the slide, is equine movement as a therapy tool. And there is actually an American Hippotherapy Association. So basically, this is using the horse as a tool for more physical therapy, the motion. People that have physical issues need to strengthen. Like I've heard of some cases that a girl had cerebral palsy. That's what I'm trying to say, cerebral palsy. And so one side of her body was weaker than the other. And so the equine therapy, the hippotherapy, was used to help strengthen that part of her body. So, okay, let me see. Okay, and so this is just a brief history of the development. I think equine therapy has become pretty well known now, but it really goes back pretty far. So the whole concept started because at the 1952 Olympics in Helsinki, There was a rider named Liz Hartle, who won a silver medal in dressage. So she had had polio and had used riding to overcome the effects of polio and strengthen her body enough that she was able to actually ride in the Olympics, which is pretty incredible because there's you have to be pretty good to ride at that level. So then out of that, in the 1960s, therapeutic riding centers first started developing in Europe and Canada and then came to the United States. Hippotherapy developed because really the Europeans took that idea on first because they viewed the horse and riding as an adjunct to physical therapy. So they were kind of the leaders in that. But then, the Americans caught up, and in 1969, the North American Riding for the Handicapped Association was established in actually Middleburg, Virginia. So a group of 23 people got together and said, hey, we're going to get this going because this looks like it's a very, good treatment for therapy, for, physical therapy or whatever. So some other organizations that developed out of that or after that, these are not necessarily connected to the first founding of, it's called NARHA, N-A-R-H-A. The Certified Horsemanship Association was established in 1967, and that is actually more out in the western part of the country. And then in 1999, EGALA was formed. So EGALA stands for Equine Assisted Growth and Learning Association. So this is the organization that does the therapy that's not riding, non-riding. You're on the ground with the horse. The client is interacting with the horse and learning about themselves. And we're going to talk a little bit more about how that happens. So then in 2011, NARHA becomes PATH, the Professional Association of Therapeutic Horsemen, and it's now an international organization. And that's the organization that I got my certification through to be a therapeutic riding instructor. Okay, so we do need research though. Okay, so anecdotal evidence, which is what do you see happening, scenarios. So I have a little girl who, she's 13 now, but she has come and done riding with my program. So she's nonverbal and moderately impaired, diagnosed with autism, ASD, autistic spectrum disorder. So she attended therapy kind of sporadically from 6 to 8, and I didn't see, didn't see them for any therapy for maybe about a year in that time. But then she started back about age 8 and has routinely come since then. So over the past 2 years, her mom reports. Cassandra?
Like once a week?
Yeah, typically once a week. When the weather's bad, like in the winter, sometimes we'll take about a month off. But yeah, typically it's once a week. Some therapeutic riding centers do sessions. And so they'll do like maybe an 8-week session, take a couple weeks off, and then have people sign up for another 8 weeks. And then again, a lot of times take a month or 2 off in the summer and then in the winter, just because the weather is either too hot or in the winter too cold and rainy and stuff like that. So, okay, so mom has started reporting over the past 2 years that her daughter gets excited about going to lessons. And so because she's nonverbal, what they do is they show her a picture of an activity to show her that's what she's going to do and have a routine. So she's become really motivated. If they show her this and say, you need to get all your tasks done so you can do this, she's getting excited and motivated. So that's been about the past 2 years. And then mom recently, just over the past maybe, I don't know, several months, has saying, well, the day that if we have to cancel or something doesn't work out, maybe the weather, it rains, she said, I've noticed that my daughter seems more irritable. I have more trouble taking her in public. She just seems in a not as a positive mood. And of course, the mother is relating that to the not having the horse therapy because it's something that she really loves at this point. Um, but I started thinking about that. So that's kind of anecdotal evidence. You're looking at that and saying, wow, well, this really seems like it's positive and it's working. But there's a caution with that. So is this decreased functioning due to her not being able to come to the lesson? Or is it really because her routine is disrupted? Because that is an issue for children who struggle with autism, is that when their routine is disrupted, they get out of sorts. It's hard for them to make that adjustment. So, even though it's really tempting to say, wow, this is, yay, really research is needed. That's the emphasis, to really find out what's going on. Is this really, if you have children who are autistic, have therapy, and then a group doesn't, like a control group, and you see that, overall the functioning of the group that gets the therapy is better. That's more like what research does to really verify what's going on behind the scenes. So, okay. All right, here's more evidence that we know it works. Okay, so this is one of my riding students and one of my horses. The horse's name is Princess, and I'll talk about her a little bit later when we talk about screening. But this young boy is a high functioning autism. Really, even though he could speak, he he struggled to be verbal. He had the language skills. That was not an issue, but he just was very introverted. And so the first picture on the left is when he closer to the time when he first started coming. He was about 11 or 12. So what we did is over about a 4-year time period, he came for about four years. We would go to Special Olympics in Raleigh for the big show once a year. And so both of these pictures are at the show. So the first picture on the left is the first time he went. And you can see the height difference. See how much taller he is in the second picture because he's 16 at that point. And you can see he's got the gold medal around his neck. So for 2 years in a row, he won the state gold medal in dressage, um, uh, you know, as part of doing his, equine activities. And he was just, I can't tell you what a boost that was to his identity, his self-esteem. He really didn't have any outlets. Social outlets, was not interested in social outlets, but he was very interested in horses. And so he was able to come and develop some social skills. And, the events when we went to Raleigh, there was always a big social gathering for the participants. And so he got to actually go to a dance and, have meals with, a large group. And so that was very therapeutic for him. Now, let me just, qualify that autism is working with children with autism is you're not really doing psychotherapy. It's more it's more a therapeutic activity. It's not really psychotherapy. So that sometimes that's a distinction people don't understand, but um, because of his issues, children with autism, you more teach and train them how to have social skills. You're not doing therapy and finding out, well, why are you, what makes you sad or happy or anxious or anything like that. Um, so again, this is the anecdotal evidence. He had such a positive experience. he was able to improve his functioning. So on the surface, it looks very much like the horse therapy did that. Okay, so with research, we need to become evidence-based, to have the research to, show that this really works. Scientific proof, understanding what makes it work, so we can tell the difference. Is this really because of the treatment, or are there other things going on? So interventions also can become more effective and focused if we have the research information that this is what works. It can benefit the client tremendously because there's a clear start and end. You're not just going along in therapy forever. And then actually, this is interesting to say, in the mental health field, even generally, not just with equine therapy, insurance companies have really driven and motivated the field to become more evidence-based and to tighten up and not just see people for 2 years and what are your, where's your end point and what are your goals? What is that saying to your client? Are you ever going to be well? And so insurance started saying, hey, wait a minute, we're not going to pay for people to, go to therapy for 2 years, and what are you doing? And that was really for the field. That was back in probably the 80s, the early 80s, it started to shift. And that's when research, people got on the ball with research and started, trying to really prove, okay, research says, this is what really works. And so one of the most, I will say that one of the most research and evidence-based interventions is called cognitive behavioral therapy. And really, we're going to talk later about how those are really biblical principles that researchers then kind of confirmed, is the way I feel about it. So, okay, and of course, accountability, so that you're doing the right treatment for the right issues and stuff like that. So, okay, so in becoming evidence-based, these are just a few research, some information. So in becoming evidence-based, equine-assisted psychotherapy is very evidence-based now as a treatment for veterans with PTSD. It's been so well established at this point in research that I think I've seen that places can even receive federal funding for that. And so that's very clearly established. For other populations like children, it's still, this is a quote from a research article, still in its infancy. And the reason that is truly there has not been the volume of research, but a horse therapy or psychotherapy is a little more difficult to do than just studying somebody at an office or, a group. You've got to have the horses, you've got to have the, people that are trained to do, and then you've got to find the participants who want to engage in equine psychotherapy. So, having a true research design says that you have a control group and an experimental group, and that's just very difficult in this field. So, but it's developing. I think there's been some very good research to come forth. So this is the statistic about a little over 1 in 4 children seeking mental health treatment are diagnosed with PTSD. So there's a huge need to address trauma, and so, it's good that the equine assisted psychotherapy centers are developing and becoming fairly common, I guess, especially with the PATH certifying the centers. Okay, so then the next 2 points, I did want to just read a little excerpt that I actually wrote. This is something that in the review of research. So the next 2 points kind of talk about how ongoing stress, responses of trauma will shut down cognitive processing. So, the part of your brain is called executive function that makes logical decisions, can think rationally about things, is in the front of your brain. Well, that shuts down when you get stress and trauma. And so that makes it difficult to talk about things. It's harder for people whose logical part is shut down to really talk about, their reactions, their feelings. One of the key things about trauma is you want to avoid talking about what happened to you. And so a lot of times the cognitive, the talk therapy processing is not as effective. And then the next point says nonverbal treatment to develop safety and trust reactivates cognitive processing and your affect or your emotional, being able to control and regulate your emotions. So the little excerpt I wanted to read real quickly that ties all of that together. So traditional therapy may seem unsafe to trauma survivors whose neurological systems may be in a hypervigilant state and feel overwhelmed. Under ongoing stress responses, the limbic system of the brain, which is more of the emotional control, repeatedly triggers and remain on, leaving the body in a hypervigilant state, making body somatic regulation of your body important in complex trauma recovery. Talk therapy alone can be rendered ineffective when the impact of trauma on the body is combined with trauma impacting cognitive processes. This is especially true for those whose trauma started in childhood. Nonverbal approaches supporting the therapeutic relationship and the development of safety and trust can improve cognitive processing and affect regulation. So tapping into the nonverbal things like the equine therapy, art therapy, and there's other experiential, there's music and dance, so there are other things that can be done to help tap into, dealing with recovering when you're, the processing, the cognitive processing part of your brain is shut down. Okay. Okay, more benefits of the equine assisted psychotherapy. Okay, this is the horse part. So basically the presence of the horse in animals generally, obviously other animals are used for therapy too. Dogs are very commonly used as therapy animals. So the presence of the horse and animals generally is related to oxytocin in the brain, which is the hormone in your brain that makes you want to connect or affiliate to people. And so the horse helps to produce oxytocin in your brain and can lead to reduced anxiety, hyperarousal, and reduced aggression and increase in trust and empathy. And that was a study done by Beetz et al. Also, the equine provides for safe, positive touching when the child or client is grooming, petting, riding. And so this can establish some safe emotional touch for people with trauma. Okay, so horses provide immediate feedback about nonverbal human behavior and can increase awareness about behaviors and emotions. So basically, part of this ties into horse psychology, but so let's just go on because we're going to talk about that on the next slide. Okay, let me see. All right. So basically, horse psychology, horses live in a heightened awareness because they're prey animals. And so, their defense is that they're always watching the environment, what's going on, is something going to get me? And so they're just, they have the largest eyes of any mammal, and so that's their defense. Their eyes also operate, this is just a tidbit on the side, their eyes also operate independently, so they're monocular vision. So like if you're walking a horse around a ring in a circle, they're going to see something on the side with one eye, but if then you go the other way, when they see it with the other eye, it's like seeing it for the first time again. and there's no recognition of it. So that's good to know. So you know what horses need to be aware of in their environment. Um, so they, because of that heightened awareness, they perceive even just little changes in people. Um, and they can provide, as their behavior changes, then, humans can recognize that and adjust and realize, oh, wait a minute, I'm doing X, Y, and Z, and that's obviously making the horse nervous, or, something, or I feel anxious, and so my behavior is different. So horses are good to provide that feedback and can help the child or the client to see, oh yeah, this is really an issue. I see that now. Yeah.
So if a person was riding a horse in this therapy and they were anxious, what would the horse do? How would they provide that feedback?
They would be some of it may be in just body language. Horses when they get anxious, their head goes up and they get tense. So you may see something like that. They may, their step may be quicker, but a lot of it can be in their, just you have to know what a horse's body language is, and so yeah. So if they get tense around, or they may become a little bit non-compliant because they're uneasy, or they may, be a little jittery. They may be prancing or moving around. That's how their anxiety would come out, I guess, in their movement and what they're doing. Like I said, when they become tense, their head goes up and they're like looking
But
around.
if the person riding was anxious and the horse would be anxious automatically, or
Not necessarily, and it all depends on the horse too.
okay.
Yeah, horses. Well, they would feel it. Let me say that they would feel it because we're going to talk about that in a minute too. But they would be attuned to that anxiety, but the personality and the training of the horse would determine the intensity of the reaction, or what that looked like specifically for the horse. So. Um, I'll give a little example. So I'm doing some work at a therapeutic riding center right now here in Virginia, and partnering, and helping the director and lead therapist of this particular program in Virginia. And so she has a group of at-risk children come, that are in like an alternative school, are on the borderline of, in trouble functioning in the school system. And so she did an activity that it was very telling. So they were grooming and brushing the horses, and then she had them place their hands on the horse's back and have them practice deep breathing to calm down, to kind of as a thermometer to see how calm they were, or were they anxious. And so of course these kids are laughing and joking it off, but one girl, she put her horses on the pony's back, put her hands on the pony's back, and interestingly, the pony started moving back and up and like this. And, the instructor said, it's okay, just keep breathing. And so as she continued to deep breathe, and let her anxiety out, well, within about a minute, the horse calmed down and quit doing the prancing. And so the horse could sense her anxiety. But that's just I guess, a practical example. Yeah. Actually, I'll have to say, when I saw that activity, I thought, I'm going to try that with, I'm training a horse who's a little bit anxious. And so, he's doing pretty good, but I'll show his pictures later in a minute. But anyway, he's a little bit nervous when I put the saddle on him. It's a little bit of an anxiety thing for him. So what I started doing is brushing him, taking a little more time to brush him, and then I would put my hands on his back and do that activity. And you could just see the change in his body. He would get real still, and then he would go and just let a breath out. And then I'm telling you, since I've been doing that, he's not, he was kind of turning and like almost like snapping his teeth because he was anxious. And then when I told him he couldn't do that, he would try to chew on the board, the fence. And so I knew that he had anxiety. Some people might have just said, oh, he's just, being a mean horse. Well, no, he's not. Horses are not, 90%. I mean, I'm sure there's a few that are, a handful. But yeah, so when I helped him to calm down, he's been fine. So, I thought, yay, boy, I got me a new technique. Okay. So just one more point on this slide. Veterans with diagnosed with PTSD receiving a manualized, which means like a structured program, probably 12 weeks of, we're going to, it's done the same way, same kind of sequence of things. Equine facilitated cognitive processing therapy. Over 12 weeks of this treatment, testing after the treatment showed that 84% no longer met the criteria for PTSD. And that was a study done in 2019 by Wharton et al. So that really stood out to me. I thought that was pretty good. So generally, as I've looked at the research, it seems like 12 weeks, the longer programs that are more like 12 weeks instead of just 4 or 8, and then also the ones that are structured, you're not just kind of doing this and that, but you have a structured plan, like it's a sequence, like first you help them with coping skills, and then you do some education, and then they maybe talk about how they're connecting to, there's a process when it says it's a structured program or a manual. So, okay.
That's an amazing statistic right there. 84%
Yeah.
after only 12 weeks.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. More benefits of equine assisted therapy. Okay, so complex trauma. That's really the area that I'm studying and want to help children with. Children that maybe have experienced multiple layers of trauma in early childhood, and then that's just really hard to even understand and process for them because they may not even have a memory of specifically what happened when, but the effects are still felt in their emotions and in their body. So there was a study in 2018 where they combined equine activities with there's a structure, a framework called attachment, regulation, and competency that's been developed, ARC, A-R-C. This is a trauma-informed, evidence-based framework, which just means that they're targeting issues that people deal with in trauma. That's what trauma-informed means. And then evidence-based, so there's been enough research done on this framework to say there is scientific proof that this helps people to deal with complex trauma. So, so in these activities, there were specific activities about attachment and how to regulate and control your emotions, and then helping them to feel competent. And so all of this worked together, and the results found that there was a decrease in trauma symptoms, a decrease in also anxiety, depression, somatic, which means feeling stuff in your body, or sensory issues, and behavioral dysregulation, which means you're out of control. So all of those things decreased, and then what increased was interpersonal skills, communication strategies, overall social functioning, and internal regulation and organization. So there's some really pretty specific results. There also was evidence of, with these children, that they were now starting to have some higher order cognitive processing functioning in their brain. For example, their language was increased, their language skills were increased, and their decision making was increased. And then also they were able to develop positive coping skills, where maybe before that had been a deficit. So So that's a really fascinating study to me, and I hope to maybe do some research along those lines and really try to address the complex trauma issues. So, okay, so there was one more study about parents reporting that they saw benefits in their children. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, there you go. Parents saw benefits such as their child's self-concept was improved, as well as emotional well-being, self-regulation, being able to control their emotions increased, improved social interactions, and then there were some unexpected outcomes that the researchers found, and that the parents' happiness increased because they were proud of their children. Wow, my child has made this progress, and um, so that was a good research study. Okay, well, let's look at the horse's perspective, and we're getting ready to wrap up this. Okay, so from the horse's perspective, there are standards of care for therapy horses. This can be intense and really stressful work for them as well, because they're around a lot of people maybe that have a lot of issues. And so PATH, the organization PATH, says a maximum of 6 hours of work per day and carry no more than 20% of their body weight. Well, honestly, I do a small program, and I would never work my horses 6 hours a day. Typically, it may be a few hours, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 lessons maximum. But the horse, those of us doing this try to take really good care of our horses because they're doing a lot. And then there's, from the horse's perspective, again, this is what we were talking about, the horse being in tune with the rider or the client. So research has found that when you test, or this particular study tested the horse's cortisol level, which is a stress hormone, and the rider's cortisol level, and they were the same, they would match. So that kind of verifies that horses are in tune to the riders. But there was another study that showed if the person was not riding, not mounted on the horse, that did not necessarily apply. That it was more the physical contact where the horse would attune to the rider. So finally, not every horse can be a therapy horse. There has to be a thorough screening and assessment of that, just to see if they have the right temperament and ability to, if kids flap or get wild or whatever, are they going to be upset? So you want to, take safety and the temperament of the horse and effect at all times. So, okay. Okay, and just one final little thing here about the horse's perspective. There's this let me just read this real briefly. This is from the horse's point of view. 5:45 a.m. Dawning, light shifting. The two-legged light is on. This is the horse thinking this. Soon, food. What takes her so long? What is she doing there? Stretch, cool time of day. The others are waking up, watching, hungry. Dry. There's not much grass out here. Over the fence it looks better. Metal sound. Gate opens. Hay comes. Everybody get in line. Take your places. After me. Don't even think about it, Buster. I'm giving you the look. I'm the leader here. Munching, munching. 8 a.m. Here the others come. A people day. Soon they will tend to me. Brush, scratch, rub. I like that one spot. Ah. Some two-leggeds are easier to be with than others. Some smell better, some come grumpy, some come asleep. Others are very peaceful. I can tell much about the people by their energy. I see it, or I feel it, I smell it, and I hear it. I don't know their words, but I know their songs. I see their pictures. I know it before they get here. Sometimes the helpers complicate matters. 9 a.m. The ones that ride, their energy is different. Their bodies are different. Sometimes their physical, emotional, and spiritual pains are so great they startle me. I am here to help them. Sometimes it takes some getting used to. Each one is different. Sometimes they are sleeping. Sometimes they are jerking. I know them all by their energy. The riding ones. Some are learning to balance. We go into the arena, all of us. The helpers talk and laugh. The rider talks. The one in the center of the ring talks. At first, it is hard to know who to listen to or respond to. The one on my back doesn't move with me. Those helpers by my side poke me with their elbows. What does that mean? Nothing, I guess. I just ignore it. What is all that noise? Don't they know that that drives me nuts? The magic begins with the breath. Our energies settle and come together. Your steps synchronize. Your intentions synchronize. We move as one, and then the amazing thing happens. All of our energies blend together and create something really special around our rider. It's like a bubble, an opening, a place where our intentions live and the rider is healed. So I thought that was an interesting little perspective of the horse. So anyway, yeah, so and of course we've already talked about body language, knowing what the horse is thinking, so I'm not going to go over that. And then impact on the student. You always teach students to do a horse handshake, which means you hold out your hand and you let the horse sniff your hand, and that's kind of your way to introduce yourself to the horse. And so, they just get so delighted at that. It's just the horse touched me, the horse touched me. It's really fun. And then there's the occasional horse hugs. So my horse Princess that you saw earlier, there's been a handful of times when a child has come upset. There's one in particular I'm thinking about. She was crying. She didn't know if she wanted to ride. She had been through a lot of trauma, but her mother finally got her to come out of the car and come into the ring. And she was still sniffing a little bit and crying. And when she walked over to us, my horse Princess, without any prompting, of course, this was all on her own, she looks at the girl and she put her chin on the girl's shoulder and just rested her chin there. And the girl's eyes got big and was like, of course, the horse had never done that before. And so I said, see, she likes you. I mean, it just shifted the whole atmosphere. And, she was happy. She was able to have her lesson. And, so my horse did with one touch what I probably couldn't do in an hour, to help this girl. So to me, that's just the power of the horse as your partner. So, okay, here we come. This is the end. So this is the herd. Okay, this is my little mini horse called Fancy. So I've had her for several years now. So all of my horses have really come to me as rescues. And so we call her Bossy Britches because she's a very kind of in your face horse. If somebody comes in the ring, she's going to immediately come up to them and, oh, what you doing? Can I see that? Do you got any snacks for me? That kind of a thing. So she's very friendly and the kids just love her. So I got her from a rescue. She actually was just dropped off. I guess the people didn't know what to do with her, and so they loaded her on the flatbed truck with their furniture and took her to the rescue. And I thought, oh, that's so dangerous. But she survived it, and she's been a delight. This is her pasture mate, Jack. So a neighbor was fostering him and ended up moving and of course couldn't take him. And so I said, well, I'll take him. And boy, he's just what Bossy Britches needed to get her in order. So, she was only 2 when I got her, so she really needed to learn some social skills, her own self. And so he's kind of the strong, silent type. So he doesn't get excited about things, but when he whips his hind end around and points it at her, she knows she better get out of the way. So anyway, so you take the horse's personality and then that interacts with the children, the people, so you can use that as a therapeutic tool. So he's a little more shy to warm up to people because he did experience some abuse. So anyway, okay. All right, and of course, Princess is the spotted horse. We call that a paint horse. She's been my main therapy horse, and she's been wonderful. I mean, she's very friendly. She wants to put her nose on everybody and say hi, and so the kids have really just adored her. So And then one of her pasture mates, her name is Romantic Gal, and she's been a good she's a good steady horse. She's a standardbred horse. She was a long time ago. She was actually a racehorse where they pull the little sulkies behind them and race. But anyway, and here's in training. His name is Logos. Actually, I had him donated to my program, and so he's in training. His personality is very friendly, like Princess, so I'm assessing him. But I'm still not sure at this point if he's going to be a therapy horse. You know, I know he has the potential and the personality for it, but you know, all of that will need to be assessed. So anyway, any questions about any of that? Oh, thank you. Yeah, yeah. What's that?
Your children that are coming to this are probably already experiencing a lot of fear with their trauma and the PTSD.
Yes.
So I would think encountering a horse being so large would be, they'd be afraid of it.
Yes.
So just being able to touch such a large animal, I think, would give them that sense of pride.
Yes. Absolutely.
And overcoming their fear.
Yes.
So that's probably a good start.
Yeah. I've only had one come that was afraid enough that I said it's probably not good for him to come back. He was actually a friend of mine at church. It was her son, and he has Down syndrome, and so he just was not sure. And I said it's okay. He's too overwhelmed. You know, I don't think this is good for him. So, yeah.
You think that horse with trauma is more sensitive to the children dealing with trauma, or I mean, how does that impact the work?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you know, even, and horses can recover from trauma too, but they would still have more of a tendency maybe to, you know, react. And
I
so,
meant in comparison to the other horses that didn't have as much trauma. Do you think he's especially extra sensitive about that issue?
you mean like when they're in the herd?
No, I meant the traumatized horse. Do you think he is even more sensitive to the children with trauma
Oh,
compared
I
to
see
the
what you're
horses that
saying.
don't have the trauma?
I got what you're saying. That's possible. Yeah, because right, you know, horses, you know, in the horse world, horses are either described as lazy and low energy. I don't like to use lazy, I say low energy. But they're the kind that now Logos is really that's his core of being because he's the only horse I've ever worked with and trained that I was trying to train him to go on a lunge line and kind of go around me and exercise. So when like the second or third time I was trying to do that, he decided he went around me one time and then he stopped and put his foot up to rest and said, are we done? You know, I'm done with this. I got it. I don't need to do this anymore. It was just so hilarious. But yeah, so they're either kind of lazy and low energy, or they're more what we would call hot and reactive, where they are a little bit more geared up and react easier. So, you know, that all has to be taken into consideration when you're deciding is this a horse that's good for to do some therapy. So, yeah.
One last question.
Yeah.
How many children do you have attending one session or one therapeutic event?
Right. I just do individual sessions. I know some centers, there's a really state-of-the-art therapeutic riding center in Williamsburg called the Dream Catchers, and they do group lessons, and so they, typically, I don't know, you probably wouldn't want to have more than 4, 5, or 6 around that, but yeah, I mean, I guess for the riders that are a little more advanced, could possibly do that. So anyway, yeah, but I prefer the individual sessions. So
my ex-coworker works for the Dream Catchers.
does she?
I remember I was telling you about her. She does horse therapy.
Oh, you did tell me that. Right. That she does the horse therapy. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's a beautiful place. It's where I got my certification, because when you go through the certification class, it's a week long. You have to pass tests, educational piece, and then you have to ride and show that you know how to ride a horse. So anyway, so it's a very wonderful facility there. So mine obviously is much smaller. So anyway, but we're doing a good job. There's just nothing else in Elizabeth City, so it's wonderful that people in our area have to drive, probably an hour to access that kind of service. So.
And how much does it typically cost, and does insurance cover it?
That's a good question. I'm still learning some of that myself. I personally, I'm not really charging a therapy price right now. So, Elizabeth City is just very economically depressed. And so, I charge $20 for a half hour and 30 for a full hour. So, yeah. Yeah, that's really cheap. So what it really costs, if you factor in the care of the horse and maintaining and all the cost of a lesson would be more like maybe 60, $70. So yeah, you have a question?
Yeah, my daughter had it, and I didn't even realize it.
Oh,
And
okay.
it did wonders for her, just for providing lessons.
Right.
It did miracles.
That's wonderful. I always love to hear good reports, so I'm glad that that was a real benefit for your daughter.
$35 an hour, and sometimes Liz would take her over it just
Okay,
depending on what she needed.
okay,
It was
okay, okay. That's wonderful. Oh, I get excited when I hear good success
It's
stories.
especially good for somebody on the spectrum. Like I was thinking
Yeah.
about my granddaughter.
Yeah.
How much could you accomplish in like 1 or 2 sessions?
Well, now with the autism spectrum disorders, that's almost, there's a component of, they're really better to ride because the motion a lot of times is what benefits them. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I'm sure you could do a little bit, but I would think that they would be, need a longer time probably to get some benefit. Especially with autism, it takes some, depending on the level of,
Yeah, they gotta.
takes to get into a routine and get used to doing something. Yeah. So anyway, great. Any other questions? Okay, well, good. Well, thank you, for listening to the presentation. And anyway, if anybody needs any referrals or resources, or, I've got all kinds of stuff like that. So I have one more little activity I just wanted to share in closing.
Do
So
you want the people online to know the activity or no?
probably not. Yeah. So we'll just go ahead and stop this now.